Hey guys, let's talk a little bit about the respiratory system. What does the respiratory system do for us? Respiratory system, of course, and this is the answer that every middle school kid has, it exchange gases, right? So I'm expecting a little bit more from you. It does exchange the oxygen and the carbon dioxide. We inhale oxygen from the atmosphere and gets into the lungs. I'm going to tell you exactly where that oxygen crosses the respiratory membrane and we dump all the CO2, carbon dioxide that has been uh, produced, is a waste product of our metabolic reactions. And we exhaled, breathe out that CO2. Now, that's the main function, right? To do that, we have different processes to accomplish this main function of the respiratory system. One is the pulmonary ventilation, which is taking air in and out, inhaling, exhaling. That's the pulmonary ventilation. The second process is the external respiration. When you talk about respiration, you are talking about gas exchange. When we're talking about just inhaling and exhaling air, moving the air in and out the respiratory system, that's ventilation. So the external respiration happens at the alveoli, which are round structures inside or little airbags inside our lungs, and that's where exactly the oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange occur. Now, for that, we need a perfect or in good condition cardiovascular system, because then the oxygenated blood, right, is going to carry that blood toward the tissues, following through the blood, following the blood vessels pumped by the heart. So we need an intact cardiovascular system to acoplate, to work together with the respiratory system to keep us alive. Now, the blood and the cardiovascular system in general delivers this oxygenated blood to the peripheral tissues, and is in here at the tissues in the systemic circulation where the internal respiration happens is now the exchange of oxygen, giving the red blood cells is giving up oxygen and is picking up the carbon dioxide from peripheric tissues to bring it back to the heart and from there to the lung to be exhaled. Okay, so besides all of these maybe obvious functions, respiratory system is also involved. And when we describe the first portion of the respiratory system, the nose, we can relate and say right away, well, we can smell with the nose. And yes, it's involved with smells, but also in phonation, the production of sound. Not so much speech or talking. That's another set of functions, somatic functions, movements of your lips and the muscles of your face. But the phonation, just the production of sound, is one of the functions of the respiratory system as well. So let's see all the portions of the respiratory system. I'm going to use here, I guess, yellow. Okay, what is the beginning of this respiratory tract? Well, we can enter through, usually what is considered part of the respiratory system is your nose, the nasal cavity. But of course, an alternate way in is your mouth through the oral cavity. But the respiratory portion or the organ of the respiratory tract is the nasal cavity, not the oral cavity. The oral cavity is part of the digestive system. So air goes in, flows into the nasal cavity. From there, it goes to the pharynx. This is kind of, I don't know why, I'm just noticing, kind of curved. It's supposed to be straight. But then the next section is the pharynx. The pharynx, we will see this section is shared by two systems, by the respiratory system, but also by your digestive system. What does it mean? Well, we're going to have air and food passing through some sections of the pharynx. Now, following the respiratory tract and not the digestive, we are going to pass through the larynx next, which is this section in here. Then the trachea, these tube, the trachea branches into two bronchi that supply air, they supply air to both the lungs, the right and the left lung. These bronchi are going to branch numerous times until they form these little sacs that we'll describe later that are the alveoli. Right in here is where external respiration happens. Very important, the muscle of the respiration is the diaphragm muscle. Remember the contraction of this muscle. When it gets flat, it brings in air inside the alveoli, so it's the main inspiratory muscle. Now, all of these, as you can see, is one single tube, right? And here it branches, okay? But the beginning is just one single tube until it branches to reach the alveoli. Now, the respiratory tract is divided into two zones. We have the conducting zone and the respiratory zone. The conducting zone, what do you think is the functioning here? Conduct the air, nothing else. It consists of your nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, most of the branches of the bronchi. So almost the entire respiratory tract consists of the conducting zone. And what is happening in there is that air is passing through, and as it passes through, the air is filtered, humidified, and warmed. Okay, before it reaches the alveoli, so to create the perfect conditions for the gas exchange to occur. Now, that leaves the rest for the respiratory zone, which are the last branches of the bronchioles. These are the smallest branches of the bronchi. Respiratory bronchioles, the alveolar ducts that leads to the alveolar sacs. Okay, we'll describe this in not so long. So those are the two parts or portions of the respiratory tract. In this image, we can see again, now this is a frontal view that is going to help us also to understand several of these images that we're going to describe later. So here is the entrance to the nasal cavity. This, like from here to here, that's your pharynx. From this line down to this line, this is your larynx. Down here up to here, that's your trachea. It divides into the right and left bronchi, and that bronchi divides into several branches that we'll describe later. Here you have your right lung, your left lung, and your diaphragm muscle. Okay, so now we're going to start describing the first portion of your respiratory tract, which is your nasal cavity. See you in the next video.